The Wellness Show, Episode 90.
Welcome to The Wellness Show, a podcast on health and wealth. I'm your host, Tyson Bannigan, the founder of the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy. Join me as we get the latest insight, tips, and strategies from wellness providers, coaches, and successful, heart-centered entrepreneurs, and much, much more. So welcome to the Wellness Show, and today we have a return visit with Richard Jelusich, and who is Dr. J. And we're going to talk about chakras and awareness. And I'm excited about this topic because I've been reading his book, and there's more to chakras than meet the eye. That's for sure. They're really the energy of who we are and how we show up in the world. But before we get to that topic, let me introduce Dr. Richard, or Dr. J. He's a strongly gifted intuitive. He's an author, professor, spiritual healer, international speaker, and ordained minister. He blends his experience of the esoteric meaning of the chakras with academic and scientific knowledge. He's Mr. Gadget, too, as I think is another nickname for him. He loves toys and gadgets. I know that. To date, he has taught over 490 individuals in Canada, US, and around the world, and you've taught them energy healing. Or how would you describe what it is that you've taught them? It's really a healing modality that you've come up with, right, Richard?
Well, the most common frame of reference would be something like Reiki, because Reiki is using a kind of a vital force, life force energy that is universally present. But it's a little bit more than that, because it's at the level of the chakras. The chakras actually create the Reiki energy, which is based on ki or chi, which is the prana or the life force. Oh, sorry about that. Mute your phone before going on any interview.
That's right. and watch those technological gadgets.
And so what I have been teaching for over 18 years is based on the level of the chakras. So the chakras create the Reiki energy, but above the chakras is a different type of energy, not related to space or time. And so my healers, when they learn through their 2.5 years of training, they learn about the chakra system, about how to run the energy through them as a conduit for that level of energy, but also how to make assessments as to what is the quality of each chakra as it addresses the 4 archetypes. The 4 archetypes are the mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional states of being. And so it takes time to teach something like this. It's not something that can be done overnight. So the students would typically take a weekend course and then 10, 12 weeks to practice. So we would actually meet once every 3 months to do the actual class and workshop, and then practice together. Sometimes I can't practice physically with my students, so I do so remotely, or I have qualified graduates in different cities who will practice with the students as well.
So you're doing a lot of hands-on work with them and teaching them how to work with clients
Yes.
for these energy attunements, I guess we might call them, to help people be the best that they can be. So, but this is really based on the work that you've developed and studied at the PhD level, and then put into a book, right? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. There's a book called Eye of the Lotus, Psychology of the Chakras, was published in December of 2004, believe it or not. And it has to do with the idea, my theory, that we have one chakra that may be more dominant than the others. It's a lot like being right or left-handed. There's nothing wrong with the non-dominant hand, but the dominant hand is the one you tend to use more. So each chakra is possessed of different qualities. So the heart chakra would be different than the throat chakra in how it affects how the human being perceives reality. And each chakra has one or more main psychic abilities connected to it. And so if a person, let's say, was dominant in this throat chakra here more than the others, they would tend to use that one more in how they tend to perceive and react to the reality around them. So like your brainwave activities are all constantly active. You know, you might close your eyes and go into, say, an alpha state, but all of the other states are working. It's the same thing with the chakras. They're all working. They're all open, but you may tend to predominate in one or the other. So that's been the basis of my work since the very early 90s, is I noticed esoterically when I was doing spiritual consultations that people would tend to have one chakra that was more dominant than the others, and that would set up the way they tended to perceive and react to the exigencies, the circumstances of life, and thus would help shape the way that they would develop the nature of their character in a given lifetime. And so in a consultation, I would be talking about which chakra might be dominant, or maybe some other chakra has an affect on the person that is happening because the chakra might be excess or deficient. And this opened up a whole world of not just the training, but how do you go about teaching something like this to someone about chakras that are not limited to time or space, and yet they're absolutely real. We've proven scientifically that chakras exist, that one person can send power to another regardless of the distance. And so to integrate this into a form of awareness beyond just academic knowledge, it takes at least 2 to 2.5 years. And it has nothing to do with how sharp or how intelligent the student is. It's just like asking an apple tree to produce an apple in less time than it does. It just doesn't really work that way. And so having done this work now almost 30 years and teaching students about 18 years, very soon here, it'll be 18 years, I realized that, as I get older, I start telling my students, I said, well, I should probably make the course 4 years long. And after that, you should probably hang out with me another 3 years. Because I realized that, chakras are always revealing wisdom. There's a wonderful documentary called The Yogis of Tibet. And these different yogis are interviewed. This one yogi says, you can have the knowledge that is academic, you can know the terms, but once you have the experience, you have awakened your wisdom. And so that means that as you continue to awaken the chakras, your own inner wisdom, awareness, becomes greater than the sum of your life experience. So it becomes greater than just your intellect only. So awareness means not limited to time or space. So you could perceive something happening on the other side of the world, let's say, very accurately, but there'd be no linear conduit. It would be a more of an esoteric knowledge, a way of unifying yourself with all things. So I mentioned awakening in that 7 billion people on the planet. Of course, we all have 7 chakras, and those chakras are all open, but in most people, the chakras are dormant. That's neither bad nor good, but it does mean that as we awaken the chakras, our inner wisdom, the inner Christ, inner Buddha, inner Krishna, begins to awaken, and we start to see things more as they are rather than as they appear to be.
So does that mean that the awakening is something that happens in the physical body, but that if the chakras are non-local, in a non-local space-time continuum, then they're always present? So does that mean that they're the soul's essence and they just get manifested through the physical body? Help me.
Yeah, that's a way of putting it, is that your chakras working with other energy systems help hold those 60 trillion cells together that we call our embodiment or our cells.
Well, that's an interesting way of looking at it. So it's different than most people talking about chakras as we got to clear chakras, or we got to activate chakras, or my third eye chakra has become, crystallized or whatever. And really you have a different take on that there's nothing wrong with the chakra itself. It's just that we're in the way of that being manifest. So we were talking about the non-local reality of chakras, and I was asking the question, does that mean that the energy of chakras is whole, sound, and perfect in and of themselves, but that they actually may run into problems in what we call blocked or not fully active when they're coming through the physical body? So I guess I'm curious about, how are we talking about an energetic aspect of the soul that's then manifested through the body? Is that the way that you're relating to chakras?
Yeah, that's a way of looking at it, is that the soul quality of the human being still has individuation. So even at the level of the soul, there's still some kind of uniqueness. There's still a Tyson in the astral dimension. Although you may not have a physical body, there is some form of energy distribution system, no internal glands or organs, but there's still a self. There's still uniqueness, male and female, emotions, desires. And that the chakras are the conduits between dimensions, causal, astral, physical dimension. And that because we all have certain levels of karma, those karmas are stored as little seeds, if you will, in each chakra. And as we go through our lifetimes, certain karmas will come forth according to what we did in our past lives. And so the interesting thing about chakras, as you connect the chakras to this age, is that we have the opportunity to accelerate our spiritual growth in this era called the golden era of inner transformation much further than, say, if you had to have another 1,000 lifetimes to reach enlightenment, maybe you only need 100 lifetimes to reach enlightenment. So each chakra is a conduit of the personality, or it would be even more accurate to say that each chakra is a measure of uniqueness. Thus, uniqueness is separation, because if we live in a oneness, then we have the illusion of separation. And that's what causes the suffering, is because we think we're separate when we're actually not. So your chakras are always working 24/7 to emancipate you from the limitations of the illusion of separation. And so if you endeavor to have a spiritual path, you pray, you meditate, you do a kind of yoga asanas that are meant to help awaken the chakras, you'll actually bring up more karma than less, because it's kind of like you're turning to face into the wind, and more of that spiritual energy is coming your way. The hidden part is that you're strong enough to be able to sustain those levels of challenges. But a lot of times when people hear that, they say, well, why would I want even more challenges in this lifetime? Well, it depends on what you want in terms of awakening yourself spiritually. You know, the more you see things as they are, the better choices you make. But if you make better choices, you're also living your life much more on purpose than just kind of bouncing around vaguely through life. So in my terminology, chakras are never really blocked. They're never closed. They're always open, but they can be deficient, excess. They can be erratic. They can be strong. They can be weak. And so when my students are learning how to make assessments on the chakras, they also learn how those assessments are related to the 4 archetypes of what the chakras affect: the mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional states. So if a person is beginning to awaken a chakra, they'll usually bring up some of the problems associated with that chakra. Like if I'm working on this chakra here, this is called the throat or Vishuddhi chakra. Vishuddhi means to purify. As I'm awakening this chakra, I might bring up issues of whether I'm grounded, whether I have a monkey mind or not, like my mind goes everywhere, or issues related to my intuition. Am I thinking too much? Am I trusting my intuition? Am I a little too prescient? Prescient means to get a little bit ahead of myself, to think about what I'm thinking about, which takes me out of the moment. And so along with that is what we call the inner Christ, the inner Buddha, the inner Krishna. It means within you is all that wisdom I was talking about when I referenced that documentary, The Yogis of Tibet. That the chakras are the conduits to higher states of being. Now, just because a person awakens a chakra doesn't make them a moral and ethical person. So you still need to be a good person. You still need to act in harmlessness and compassion. You know, love is your foundation. But to awaken the chakras is to emancipate you from the illusion of separation. Hidden benefit: the more that you awaken yourself, the more it affects all of the karmas around you, especially familial and parental karmas, the 2 strongest karmas that there are. So it benefits us, especially in this golden era, to awaken our chakras through our own spiritual practices, right action, right living, prayer, meditation, yoga practices, things like that. And as we do, we help harmonize the global human activity, the global human society, to awaken. Now, it could be that, you're in Canada, I'm in the US, and you might have looked at the recent elections and say, well, I don't know if that's really heading towards harmony or not. I'm not really sure. But, with birth, there can be some labor pains. And so we don't always know what are all the minutiae of the machinations that occur in order to achieve a global harmonic consciousness. But we do have control of that which is within ourselves. We can control our reactions. We can guide ourselves. And one of the key components in awakening the chakras is not just the meditation itself, but faith. Because faith is trusting with your heart what your mind cannot yet know, not yet. And in our countries, we pride ourselves on wanting to know what's going to turn out. I don't mind following what you say, Dr. J, as long as you tell me how it will turn out before I actually do it.
Yeah.
But in order to...
We want to know the results before we even begin the process. And so we'd like to hold our politicians to that as well, which is totally impossible
of course.
to do. I mean, there's so many
things
going on. But, the key that you said was that we're in the midst of an awakening, right? A self-awakening, yes. A planetary awakening, and now a nationwide awakening. As America, in India, they say America is the sleeping giant. Well, I think America is about to waken up. And
it'll be an interesting 4 years. That's for sure. With the president being who he is, and the Congress and the Senate, the House, all Republican. We'll see. We'll see what happens. The best affect that we can have as unique people is to be awakened. So the more awakened we are, the more informed choices we can make. But as I put it, 95% of all communication is not verbal or physical, it's energy. So as we continue to awaken ourselves, 95% of us is that vibration or that frequency that we keep hearing about. Even though those are very poor words to describe our consciousness, it does, in fact, our level of consciousness does have an effect upon the entire population. I'm sure you've heard of the Maharishi effect, right? Where two or more are gathered, generates a huge wave of change affecting mass consciousness. This is true. And so there's over 500 scientific studies that prove that human consciousness affects biological and electrical systems. So it behooves us to awaken our chakras as best we can, to live in right action, right behavior, harmlessness, compassion. It behooves us to do that so that we can affect a harmonious, loving, global inner transformation.
So I'm curious, we talk about that nation states have a soul. Certainly that is some of the philosophical underpinnings of theosophy. So if a nation state has a soul like America or United States of America, does that mean that it also then has chakras as well? And then does that mean that each country is running maybe one chakra more dominant than another?
There has been that kind of talk that's been put forward. In my way of looking at it, it would be a group soul that has incarnated with a common karma called the United States, or a group soul that is incarnated with a common karma called Canada, or any other country. And that specific karma has brought a people together for a unanimity of purpose that represents what that country's foundation is. And if you look at the work of Alice Bailey and Joelle Kuhl, she talks about ray packages, and that different countries come in different soul ray packages. So there's lots of different ways to look at what is the consciousness that creates a country to be what it is. Look at Canada, that sits on top of the world's largest supply of fresh water, and is so abundant with natural resources, and yet maybe only 35, 36 million people for this vast land mass that is Canada. And there was a psychologist years ago in Canada, I don't know if he was University of Calgary or not, but he wanted to know what is the basic foundation, what is the basic psychological foundation of the average Canadian? Was it European, English, Scottish, French? And you know what he found out? It's indigenous. Indigenous. So it means the basic philosophical, psychological foundation of the average Canadian person is more indigenous than anything else. It means that the karma of the Canadian people is more connected to the land and to the preservation and the elevation of the principles of conservation than to anything else, so that the Canadian people can show the world, a lot like Costa Rica does now, the way to truly husband the land, if you will, which means how to take care of the environment in which we live.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting assessment. I think that's also true of the original motherland of Russia too, that it has a similar connection to the deep qualities of nature that literally run in the veins of its people, and that, you know, in the area of Anastasia and those books, you see that manifesting through from generation to generation. But there's a whole sort of codification of how that could even manifest through community and schooling and culture and traditions and the way we make decisions. And
Right.
very, very interesting when we start to think about when we're working towards, you know, global peace. We're bringing all of these intensities of chakras into a holism, which is sort of interesting.
Yeah.
Because we are all one. We never could be separate, but we have this fantastic illusion of other. So yeah, it's an interesting aspect. But probably more relevant, what you were saying was that when we're coming into our divinity through our chakras, or aligning with our chakras, you were talking about really the familial, or, you know, or the family of origin and our lineage as being really key factors that we need to work on. So, I mean, the culture one is further out. It's still relevant. It's sort of like another sphere of this development of who we are, right? They're sort of holons within holons.
Yeah. The family and the parental karma are the two strongest karmas that there are. You know, sisters, brothers, aunts, uncle, person in your very extended family, you know, you and your parents, grandparents, you and your children, grandchildren. And within that family also is the karma of those past lives. You know, sometimes father becomes uncle or mother becomes daughter, and we trade roles, sometimes races, sometimes cultures, and different karmas. But human beings will have this causation, which is why we have our present rebirth, is because of karma. Karma is basically the law of cause and effect. So the chakras are the way that our soul individuates itself into a given lifetime according to the accumulation of the karma that we have accrued or accumulated from our past lifetime, good lifetime, not so good lifetime, and so forth. So the you that is Tyson right now is a representation of those karmas that you had incurred in past lifetime, good karma, not so good karma, but that created the you that represents yourself with your acumen, you know, your skill sets that you have. So the way I look at it is, I like to use the word God. God gives us a gift, all of us, in a given lifetime, and says, okay, here you go. You've got this gift. Now, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to externalize it and use it to help people? Are you going to use it to be only materialistic and look only after yourself? How are you going to do that? The cool thing is the chakras are still you, and they're working 24/7. We never close, always working to help you emancipate yourself from illusion and limitation. And so you're guaranteed, Tyson, to bring up those challenges and circumstances in your life that represent the opportunity for liberation from the limitations of illusion that create the suffering that we have, what is called a samsara in the world, the illusion that creates the suffering. So if you pray or meditate or do ceremony with the intent to awaken the chakras, you start stirring that energy. By stimulation, the chakras begin to awaken and the wisdom starts coming forth and creates the challenges that you have. The trick is, because we're always strong enough to meet our challenges, we just don't think that way. The other part is that when a challenge comes up, there's usually someone around you, or more than one person around you, who is meant to help you work through that challenge. Maybe it's in the form of a spiritual teacher that you know in your life, that person comes forth and assists you in your own spiritual growth. And so the more assiduously or the more devotedly you are working towards this goal of harmlessness, compassion, awakening the chakras, the more people you help, but especially in the familial and parental karmas. But that promulgates or makes formal the externalization on all levels and affects all beings. The better you're doing, the better it helps all creation, not just yourself.
So this is really the evolution of consciousness then on a planetary level is being able to do that. So it's an inside job with great ramifications on the outside.
It's an inside job, yeah.
It's an inside job. So that's really quite exciting and very empowering. So as you were saying, as you turn the boat, into the wind, as we become more desirous of moving towards enlightenment or full activation of our kundalini or allowing the shiningness of our chakras to come through, our divinity to show up, or however we want to word that. We also have the force, say, of the coming into the golden age. This is a planetary cleanup time. And so we've got forces upon forces that are saying this is the time, this is the necessity is to get out of the fear and doubt and shame and guilt. This is the opportunity to do the cleanup both personally and planetarily. And this is why we're going through such massive change. Is that how you see it as well?
Yeah. And that's why the changes are so rapid. And the time between changes is so short. And so this is, I've been studying the Mayan culture for many years, almost 20 years now. And I've been taking people down to the Yucatan, Honduras, Guatemala, Costa Rica, to study the cosmology. And the Mayans had predicted that this time would come, that it would be the time of inner transformation, that there would be this speeding up. Imagine a little red ball bouncing, and every time it bounces, it starts like this high, and then less and less, but faster. And so it means there's less distance, less time between the changes, but each change is much faster. I mean, if you look at the 80s and the invention of the Walkman and the VCR and all of that now fits into your phone, which only 30 years ago were these huge clunky type things, that we carry around on our shoulders. Where is all of that headed? Because it's not just the basis of technology for its own sake. It is what is called an externalization of where we are in consciousness. Because at a certain point, this mind that we think acts like a hard drive will exceed itself. We tend to think that only so much can go into the mind, and yet there's people that have suffered from diseases of the mind where this one fellow in England, his actual brain was pushed out within his skull to only be maybe 1 millimeter to 2 millimeters thick, and yet he was a college-educated person. And so what really is the brain is a level of what if you're in a spiritual philosophy, it's mind and matter. And we have this matter, but it is formed by mind or consciousness. And so as we're in an age where we have an opportunity to grow exponentially spiritually, we go to a level beyond our own technologies. We start mastering the technology instead of the technology mastering us. I mean, look how many people now are in accidents when they're using their phone to text or to call somebody in the car, and we're distracted by the very technology that we hope will help us. But those technologies, like these cell phones, they're just an externalization of where our consciousness is. In old times, you and I would just simply think to each other. We would get the entirety of the thought as consciousness. There'd be no need to send anything over the phone or over a wire, because we were at that level called unity consciousness, where we simply just existed on a much higher level of being. And I believe we are successfully headed to that place. It may take some time. It may have some more birth pains, but I think we are definitely headed in the right direction.
Well, we got 30 seconds to go to close off the show and again, this half hour has gone whipping by. So how do people get hold of you to work with you, Richard?
My website is lightnews.org, lightnews.org, lightnews.org. You can also email me at info@lightnews.org. And that's the best way to get a hold of me. The website has a lot of information. I have programs going on in Canada and the U.S. on a regular basis, free energy healing in Canada and both places. And so just my delight to be of service. I thank you so much for this interview, Tyson.
Yeah, it was great to have you on the show. And as we go into the new year, Richard will be a regular, and we'll be announcing that shortly. It'll be a regular. Get along with Richard. Come and have a talk with Dr. J. So thank you very much, Richard. That was a lot of fun, and we'll catch up with you in the new year. So bye for now.
Thank you, Tyson. Blessings. Thank you.
For quality online wellness products, courses, and services, visit our sponsors, thewellnessstore.ca. and the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy located at thewellnessacademy.ca. To stay in touch, visit us at thewellnessshow.ca. And until next time, be healthy, wealthy, and wise.